We are moments away from kickoff of round one Swiss here at the Americas Summer Playoffs. Welcome everybody to fr0zen versus ute1234. We have an unusual lineup on our left for Team Liquid, runner-up for the World Championship, as he has Cube Warlock, a Control Priest, a Spell Hunter, and an unironic Rot Face in his Recruit Warrior lineup. What is happening, Brian Kibler?
I'm not entirely sure, but I love it. I actually had an opportunity to play a little bit with the Recruit Warrior deck that fr0zen is playing on my stream over the past week, and it was powerful in some instances, but wasn't as strong in some of the matchups that I feel like it looked like it was going to be targeting. For instance, Paladin. You're playing a deck that has a bunch of whirlwind type effects, but you can often just end up getting beat up by, say, a Blessing of Kings, an early minion that you don't end up clearing. And one of the problems that Warriors had since the nerf to Fire Warlocks is just early game defense. So you're not really playing like full-on control. You don't have the Baku hero power armoring up. But it does have a lot of tools in its arsenal, which we will be seeing in this first game. fr0zen is going with the Warrior right away.
Yeah, this is a deck that's going to be hard to beat, as Ute has Spiteful Druid, and I'm looking at Spiteful Druid as probably being his best deck for this matchup. When I say this matchup, I mean more player versus player. And Spiteful Druid is just so good at getting on the board that it's going to force fr0zen to really line up that move correctly. But he's got double Forge of Souls, and that's a really powerful opening hand.
Forge of Souls is a very strong card in this deck. He even plays 2 Forge of Souls with only 3 total weapons. The reason being, your most important cards in your deck against aggro are your Blood Razors. Your most important card in your deck against control and mid-range is Woe Cleaver. So you want to have access to them all the time.
That's right.
So using the Forge of Souls, sometimes you don't get the weapon draw off of the second copy, but it's more important that you just have access to it every single game.
That's right. One thing that I ran into playing a Recruit Warrior, and I played a bunch of different versions. I played Fibonacci and fr0zen's version, which they collaborated together on. I've also played Jombray's even version, which felt really cool, the hero power all the time. And they definitely fell into some issues with trying to just remove the early game board, so even having that redundancy can be important.
One thing I really like here from Ute, he looks like he's holding onto the Glacier Shard. He's going to go for it.
Okay.
He knows, these players know the contents of each player's deck. Right. And so obviously Ute knows there's no Fiery War Axe in fr0zen's deck. So if he waits until the following turn to freeze him, he would guarantee there's no possibility of a swing from Blood Razor. It's interesting because he does have the Greedy Sprite in his hand, which he wants to play on 3. So I think that it probably is still correct for him to just play the Glacial Shard here. But there's definitely, we saw the hesitation there as he's considering, do I want to try and wait and freeze the weapon?
That's right. And a little bit of a scary moment as well for Ute, because he does have Spiteful Summoner and 1 Ultimate Infestation, so if he does pick it up, we've seen it happen a couple times on broadcast last weekend. But thankfully, he's been able to pick up that Mana Crystal gain, and now he's been able to curve out into the Spiteful Summoner, which is what you're really considering. Ute also has the Bittertide Hydra, and that's something that a few Spiteful Druids are disagreeing on whether or not they want to bring it into their deck list, because it has sabotaged some players in the past.
Yeah, I think we saw Tice last weekend take something like 20 from a Defile or something like that.
It was pretty absurd.
So the Spiteful Summoner will come down for Ute. There is the second Infestation, gets revealed. What's in the box?
Yes, Tarantus is the best outcome, and it is Tarantus.
It is Tarantus, but fr0zen has Brawl. fr0zen kept Brawl in his opening hand, and the Flame Elemental still being in play is a big deal here. And yes, the Flame Elemental wins the Brawl. That is one tough 1-1 taking down the Tarantus.
Oh, man. Or perhaps he just won by, surviving, just eliminate.
He just in the corner,
Summoner and Tarantus take each other out.
He's just like, listen, okay, guys, you guys duke it out. I'm just gonna be over here.
And just from that Brawl, fr0zen's in full control, double execute, ready for the Bittertide Hydra as well. And the big thing that a lot of these Warriors are worried about when recruiting is how they're going to line up their mana. But with the most powerful turn already eliminated from Ute with Spiteful Summoner and follow Bittertide Hydra, fr0zen can just set up the best Woe Cleaver and then just win the board from there.
Yeah, one of the big things about Druid is that while it can be very powerful proactively with the Spiteful Summoner, now a big Bittertide Hydra, it does suffer a bit at actually being able to deal with big things your opponent might play. It doesn't have a way to kill a giant minion in the opposing side very easily. And if you start Woe Cleavering and getting out your Lich Kings and Ysera's before they can get to Ultimate Infestation and really reload and flood the board, that's a big problem for them.
fr0zen has some mana efficiency concerns. He could, for example, use shield block and shield slam instead of using execute. But for diversity's sake of his hand, you want to have a mix and match of resources. You don't want to have 2 executes when you can use one of them and have shield slam as an option as well. And it seems like instead, fr0zen's gonna go with double whirlwind off of his blood razor effect, 1 off the death battle, 1 off the battle cry for maximum damage opportunity.
This is interesting, yeah. This is fr0zen deciding. This is a little peculiar to me because the second blood razor is his best way to get a enabler for the second execute if he were to get his blood razor destroyed. For instance, Ute has a gluttonous ooze in his deck. So if he were to have a gluttonous ooze to kill the second blood razor, it's possible that execute just rots in his hand.
Yeah, and they also have to consider the fact that he has Woe Cleaver already as well, which means that he won't be wanting to equip the second blood razor anytime soon. So he wants to utilize its effectiveness. And for a recruit warrior, you kind of accept that at turn 6 onwards, you generally don't want to be spending mana removing. You want to be playing proactive threats. So I think fr0zen's trying to use all of his removal preemptively before he knows that inevitably he's going to drop Yip, Lich King, Ysera, Woe Cleaver, whatever comes out of it.
Yeah, there's also the interesting dynamic of trying to line up your armor with your Yip turn. That he doesn't want to use his shield block necessarily going into his turn 6 when he may take damage, and then he wants to have that available for Yip on that following turn because that was his only like guaranteed threat. Obviously, as Woe Cleaver, he can get something, but Yip is the most powerful threat in the deck because if you have enough armor, it generates multiple threats. And if you have 10 armor, you're playing essentially Yip and 10 drop. You're basically Spiteful summoning your opponent as well, and they have to kill the Yip or bust through your armor to even prevent you from getting more of them.
Yeah. So a use of Bring It On here, assuming he does end up clearing the board, would ensure that he gets at least a decent-sized minion off Yip.
He's going for it. He's just setting up the Yip next turn. 15 armor, and the discount that he's giving Ute here is not super scary. The only big minion that he would really be able to play here, he'd already be able to play, which is the Grand Archivist. It's the only really large, actually no, sorry, he has a Lich King. He can already play Lich King for 8. And the additional 2 mana, not a huge deal.
Right.
So there could be like a board flood here coming from Ute, but that's also not super scary if you're yipping into a 10-drop. It's not like they have Savage Roar in their deck or anything to really punish you if they get to go wide. The biggest threat there is Fungalmancer, but at 31 health, that's not that big a deal for fr0zen either.
Ute unfortunately doesn't get the benefit of the Druid of the Scythe buff from Prince Keliseth. The transformation doesn't do anything for its stat line, so definitely kind of a painful scenario here. Is Ute not playing a Spellbreaker onto the board either?
I think he's got to go for one of them. He needs to get some sort of pressure here.
I like the taunt as well, kind of protecting all of his minions from the Blood Razor swing. And now fr0zen has a choice on what he wants to play, but I mean, he can kind of play his own miniature Spiteful Summoner in a way. Summon a 10-cost minion, or actually, it would just be a giant minion in general, considering that there are minions at 12 mana cost.
Yip does max at 10 though, so we'll always get a 10-drop. So here, it's an interesting turn for fr0zen. He actually could play Woe Cleaver, get the Death Rattle from his Blood Razor, attack and kill the Druid of the Scythe, and get a recruit here. That is scary if his opponent does have weapon removal, because getting your Woe Cleaver killed is pretty awful for you. And Ute obviously knows the Woe Cleaver's in his hand thanks to the Forge of Souls, so it could be a card that makes some sense being in his hand at that point. Just gonna go ahead and clear.
Yeah, and I mean, turn 9 is still an awkward turn for Ute unless he has straight up a Lich King, which you feel like your opponent would have played if given the chance. And fr0zen just gonna straight up clear, and this is the flexibility of that new Echo mechanic, having the ability to just be played for 2 mana, or if you want to use it as a 8 mana Flame Strike, essentially.
And there's the Gluttonous Ooze draw for Ute, so he could play this now to get the Blood Razor off the board, but I think that given that he knows there is a Woe Cleaver in the hand, he's gonna hold on to it, and he's gonna hold on to his Spellbreaker too.
I don't even know.
All right, it is Yip time, and now, as I was saying earlier, this just makes, all right, there's a 10-drop. You know, he's ready to Ultrasaur you. Lich King.
Yeah, that's probably his best draw in this scenario.
Yeah, Lich King here is actually great. Like lining up with the discounted Spellbreaker as well allows him to neutralize the threat of Geosculptor Yip.
However, Shield Slam pick up as well. I was thinking, the Woe Cleaver executes a really powerful combo, but fr0zen's gonna be able to just dominate the board, and it doesn't even really matter that he has Woe Cleaver that might get oozed. I think he just might win from sheer tempo at this point.
Yeah, just the 3 big minions here is very difficult for Ute to deal with. Yes, he can ultimate Infestation next turn, but he's still leaving all 3 large minions on the board. Infestation kills none of them.
Yeah, and it's sort of like a weird punish in a way for not having like more tempo onto the board early on to try and kill off the board, because if he had a 3/3 ooze on the board, he could potentially contest his Lich King, or at least force his opponent to do something else.
Well, if he played the ooze, it would have gotten Woe Cleavered, and things probably would have gone even further downhill for him.
Sure, I'm just explaining that right now he's so far behind.
You'd love
that
it, yeah. You'd love to at least have something in play to attack into a body, but
yeah.
But yeah, now fr0zen picks up Scourgelord Garrosh. Not really looking to play that just yet, I imagine.
1920, 23 seems to be where he's at. Does he have a chart? Does he have Gromish in the deck?
There is a Grom in the deck. The other 2 minions are Rotface and Grom here, so he picks up. Oh, Ysera as well.
Okay.
How did I forget about a drag?
Something interesting too, which is like the dynamic of mind control tech.
Right.
If fr0zen wants to, he could trade a minion in, but it does feel like you're setting yourself up for disaster if your opponent gets like a really good steal with the mind control tech and then sets up a wall of taunts afterwards.
Yeah, well, he does have Reckless Flurry in hand. So,
okay, yes, you're right.
If he's able to attack into something and then get his armor down low enough that his minions survive, but he can still Reckless Flurry and get the damage in.
Yeah.
He has what, 15, 19 here?
Yeah,
Just
I like
so much damage that he's pressing here. Even if there's mind control tech into Malfurion, that doesn't seem like it's nearly enough to keep Ute alive.
Yeah, it would have to be Criplord, Mind Control Tech, and Serenite Chain Gang to even give him a chance to survive in this spot. You just want as many taunts as possible. Not to mention that you still also want to Gluttonous Ooze the Woe Cleaver as well.
And yeah, there is Mind Control Tech plus Serenite Chain Gang, but no matter what the tech takes, I think fr0zen can piece things together to get through. I guess actually he can't get his armor down particularly low, but he does have the
he has the death.
So a single. Oh yeah, the Death Knight. Yeah, Death Knight plus Nightmare here. Yeah, there's no out for Ute here. No matter how he positions this chain gang, because Shadowmourne will just hack through them and allow the rest of the minions to hit his face.
Yeah, and that's the power of this Recruit Warrior. It's not about whether you can contest the board states, whether you can kill them fast enough before they rack up huge threats. And fr0zen's gonna take game 1 with the unconventional, untested, and undefeated Recruit Warrior. So far, it's 1-0,
baby.
I mean, that's all you need, right? Just take that 1 win and move on.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, I really think that game showcased, how quickly the Recruit Warrior can turn the corner. You're originally playing kind of the Control Warrior style in the early turns, and we saw him just like, okay, I'm gonna Warpath this down. I'm not gonna really just like try and rush my big minions into the board. But once he had a single window of opportunity to start deploying those huge minions, he just never let up, and there wasn't anything the Druid could do.
The second place silver medalist from 2017 is looking strong so far, and when we come back, we're gonna find out if he can continue his Warpath back to the championship. Stay tuned. fr0zen currently up 1-0, looking to get started off in the Swiss portion the right way, which is a 1-0 record. This is the first round of Swiss, which will be providing all things for HCT Playoffs. We'll give you score updates, standings, and of course, we'll be leading the commentary here as we go into game number 2. Just to catch you guys up, fr0zen was playing the Recruit Warrior, which beat the Spiteful Druid, and that is quite possibly fr0zen's worst matchup on paper in this head-to-head. However, we still have a lot of Hearthstone left to play.
Do we really have a lot of stats for Recruit Warrior versus Spiteful?
I will tell you, Kipper.
I feel like we have a great sense of what paper says.
There's not a lot of stats, but Recruit Warrior has one of the lowest win rates in data history for Hearthstone.
I don't doubt it, but I think that if those numbers were right, then I don't think fr0zen and Fibonacci would be bringing it here the way that they drew this up. But we will be going into Warlock, and this is Control Warlock from fr0zen. Against the Spiteful Druid from Ute here. Keleseth in the opening hand for Ute, clearly a pretty big deal.
Not just Keleseth, but also the greedy sprite to land on curve. All Ute is missing is essentially the Spiteful Summoner to kind of assemble the Holy Trinity for this deck. And Spiteful Summoner is pretty much the closest thing we have to the most powerful curve deck currently in the game. But fr0zen also has a pretty decent hand as well. It's not the fact that he has something directly to answer everything that Ute has. It's the fact that he's got a lot of utility. He's got single target removal in case a big Spiteful Summoner comes out. He has good AoE, and he also has some defenses with Stonehill Defender.
This play from Ute here, deciding to play the greedy sprite rather than the 4/4 gluttonous ooze on 3 is an interesting one, because he doesn't actually have anything to specifically necessarily ramp into immediately, and it feels like the pressure from the gluttonous ooze immediately is quite valuable. He's not playing against a deck that has Skull of the Minari.
Yes.
And this ended up exposing that greedy sprite to the owl. Granted, fr0zen has 1 owl, so that's not something that needs to be top of mind. But he wouldn't get the ramp from the sprite immediately anyway, and could still just deploy it again, say, this turn.
Yes, that's a really good point. Most Control Warlocks don't run Skull of the Minari, not only because they don't have more than 2 demons with Voidlords, but because it interferes with Azari off of Rin to the first Disciple Seals. So it's very interesting that Ute chose to go for the ramp. I mean, I think traditionally people want the ramp to increase their options, but it's not like, like you said, he doesn't have Spiteful Summoner, doesn't have Ultimate Infestation, so what would he be ramping aggressively to?
I mean, the big window, I think, is hoping that you draw Spiteful on 5, and you want to have been able to ensure your Greedy Sprite dies, so you're able to get the 6 mana on turn 5. Whereas if you were to play Greedy Sprite this turn, draw Spiteful, he wouldn't be ramping himself in that particular sequence, but he doesn't have that Spiteful. So it feels like the pressure is actually quite valuable at this point still.
fr0zen does have a way to clear the board with Hellfire. Also can just kind of put a wall between him and his opponent's minions with Stonehill Defender. Hellfire does lose a lot of its usefulness now that Prince Keleseth had been activated. A lot of the Druid's deck is made of 3 health minions, but with that buff, will most likely make Hellfire just unable to clear a lot of his minions by itself.
Yeah, there's a couple of key things that fr0zen needs to be playing around. One of those is Fungalmancer. Fungalmancer for 5 mana is one of the best ways that Spiteful Druid is able to push additional stats on the board outside of Spiteful Summoner itself. So often going into their 5 mana turn, you really want to try and reduce their board presence as much as you can. Though it looks like fr0zen here, he just wants to coin out this Possessed Lackey.
Okay.
This is sort of interesting because it does open him up to a Fungalmancer. However, if there's a Fungalmancer here, it doesn't allow for a Spellbreaker to be played. With the Dark Pact in his hand, I'm a little bit surprised that fr0zen went with this lineup. Because he has the ability to Lackey Pact next turn guaranteed, and avoid the threat of the Spellbreaker on the Lackey here.
Yeah, it's much more efficient to have the Voidlord be silenced because it's a 3/9 still compared to just a 2/2 that's pretty terrible in fighting on stats on the board.
And now, with this getting silenced, it's unclear to me what fr0zen's plan is for the following turn.
Well, I think fr0zen also could be thinking that Ute's less likely to silence early on. So if he can cheat out the Voidlord early, maybe collect some value and stabilize his health total, which seems to be what he cares about. He seems to be stabilizing tempo on the board. That's better. And if the Spellbreaker does come out, assuming it's not buffed by the Keleseth, there's that Hellfire. A second Lackey here from fr0zen.
All right.
Perhaps a second Spellbreaker? Nah, I mean, it's just as likely to happen, I suppose.
True. All right, well, Ute here does not have an answer to this Lackey. He can push damage to face and maybe develop some other minions, but that's not a great response to this Lackey here.
Yeah, it just feels like a lot of these situational tech cards that you would use for certain situations are just being useless. The Glutton Zuzu's played for tempo. Mind control tech is his strongest individually statted minion right now. It just seems very awkward for Ute. You can see him shaking his head because he's so unhappy with the state of his hand. But that's kind of what the Spiteful Druid is. It's suspect and weak to some of the awkward draws that can come your way.
It is a rather volatile deck. If you don't end up with your powerful spikes, you often don't really do that much. Here, fr0zen actually has an excellent opportunity to just attack and Hellfire clear the board. He will end up with a damaged Voidlord, but a damaged Voidlord is still pretty tough to get through.
Until he drew the Mortal Coil. He has the option of not having damaged Voidlord as well.
That's true. Yeah, he could actually just Hellfire Mortal Coil.
I mean, I think in the end, the option for a card utilizing the Hero Power is great. Picks up the Spellstone as well, so it all works out. That health loss that he got, or that he just received, is going to be made up by some of that differential with the Spellstone lifesteal. And Ute again with another awkward mid-sized minion draw. And the Kelsar's buff is great and all, it's not really doing much right now. He's gonna have to hope that the Lich King comes up big here.
Yeah, one of the big problems for Ute at this stage is that he isn't playing against Cube Lock, he's playing as Control Lock. So there are many more just removal effects in fr0zen's deck. We see the Siphon Soul in his hand. He has a Twisting Nether in his deck as well. He has Voodoo Doll. So the Lich King, while it can be a very strong body against a Cube Lock, if you're able to get to that sort of stage of the game stabilized, it's a lot harder to actually gain a big advantage of it against Control Warlock, because even if you say get Army of the Dead, there's the chance that it just gets Twisting Nethered away.
Yeah, it's true, and I think that the Spiteful Druid has largely been very reliant on that early game snowball, which hasn't happened. And Control Warlock isn't nearly as quick to kill the Spiteful Druid, but they still have, the Death Knight. They still have ways to ensure that fatigue doesn't catch up to them with Ren, the First Disciple. And I mean, just putting out a couple of waves of taunts and putting your opponent in awkward positions over and over is just going to make it difficult for the Spiteful Druid to get anything done. This Lich King has to come up something big. I'm thinking like Army of the Dead.
There is no Twisting Nether yet available for fr0zen, and he only plays a single copy. Some versions of Control Warlock play two, he just has one. Death and Decay, that can clear off these taunts, but that's not really the concern for Ute here. He needs to be pushing lots of damage, and he cannot do that with this Lich King dying.
Yeah. I mean, Death and Decay does kind of add to the state of the board.
It does?
Yes. It's so, effective for this board, but it's so underwhelming for the grand scheme of things.
Right.
It's interesting because, in the end, Death and Decay just did 15 damage. But at the same time, that turn 9 onwards is where the going gets really tough against this deck.
I'm actually not really a big fan of how Ute chose to play this here. I feel like Mind Control tech into a 4-minion board, into your Death and Decay, is potentially, okay, there's the Spiteful Summoner. We'll stop talking about that last turn, talk about this one. Ultimate Infestation, obviously the reveal, but there is a Voidlord already against this Emrys.
I think you bring up a really good question. If Ute was not going to try and protect his Vicious Fledgling from, a minion board, what is he going to save his Mind Control tech for? Is he saving it for after Blade River Gul'dan? It feels like if your opponent plays the Death Knight, you might already just be in a position where you can't win.
And in particular with Fungalmancer in his hand. So if he MC techs into Fledgling into Fungalmancer the following turn, that's very strong. That actually allows him to put on a significant amount of pressure, whereas just killing his opponent's board didn't feel like it did that much. But fr0zen now with a Voidlord and no real removal for the Emrys just yet. You piece together something, I think, with not quite. He's actually a little bit short even with Hellfire attack into Mortal Coil here. So this is now a somewhat scary board for fr0zen, because if there is, say, a Spellbreaker, this is a lot of damage just getting through.
Yes, but the Shroom and a couple of taunts and the Dark Packs have a lot to say with that.
That's true.
And that might even incentivize fr0zen to be willing to trade off more of that Voidlord, because you get the 3 bodies and you don't get the 1 body that gets silenced from the Spellbreaker.
I mean, Ute then could get some value from this mind control tech too, though.
Yeah, that's true. We'll see what he draws off this Mortal Coil. Sated Beetle, all just useful in defense. There's also a nifty play where you can Shroom Brewer the Voidlord to try to get more health on it, but I think it dies to the Emerald anyway.
I wouldn't be surprised to see Dark Pact here. He is going to Shroom Brewer the Voidlord. Okay. Yep, so he does set himself to pretty solid defensive board here.
It's a lot of damage and pressure just... There's just a Voidlord.
There's a Voidlord in the way. This is a situation a lot of Hearthstone players have experienced many times. Like, look at all the powerful minions I have. They can't do anything. There's a Voidlord in the way.
I mean, they can trade into minions. That's pretty much the name of the game here. Ute is trying to get board dominance, but Voidlord is just so difficult to chew through. And he does have a mind control tech right this instance, but it's not even his best tempo play, which is what he's concerned about.
I mean, if he does attack into Voidlord, mind control tech, he's only getting a small minion here. And then, say he gets a Fungalmancer, or say he gets a Void Walker, he can Fungalmancer and get a relatively buffed taunt, but that's not that impressive either.
Yeah, I think if you're Ute, you have to play the most dominant board position as possible, just because you're not going to win off of any burst anymore, because you're killing off the Voidlord guaranteed, or if you don't even kill off the Voidlord, you're giving your opponent time to respond to the board. So your best bet is to overload on stats, hope you draw Ultimate Infestation, and then also hope your opponent doesn't draw like the Death Knight. I think it's a miraculous combination of sequence that needs to happen in order for Ute to pull it out, but I think this play is his best option.
Well, there's now 3 reasonably sized minions on Ute's side of the board. Only 3 small taunts for fr0zen here.
That's right.
So if you were to say draw some sort of ability to deal burst damage like another Druid of the Claw, because right now it's actually not easy for fr0zen to get through this Bear Druid.
Oh, interesting.
So if he were to say draw Druid of the Claw, I think he actually would have, like with a mind control tech steal, would have potential lethal next turn.
What do you think about the second Doomsayer drawn? I kind of like, I definitely like playing
I think you definitely
one.
want a Doomsayer.
I was thinking about maybe even playing the second one and then making mind control tech even more awkward, because if the opponent does end up mind control tech,
there's an infestation.
Hold on.
So that is a big draw for Ute here.
Wow.
To be able to try and turn this corner.
He's 1 damage off of killing his opponent. Because if he ultimate Infestation, he could just hit for 10 with the Emrys. Oh, actually, I apologize. The Rin is there. I apologize. Yeah, either way, it's still, he's got a really powerful way to come back in this game right now.
It is very awkward for him that there's a Doomsayer in play, though, because his Infestation will reload his hand, but because there are 4 taunts in the way, Infestation can't allow him to get to Doomsayer or get significant face damage in. Everything just lines up slightly poorly for him. So I think he probably just wants to Infestation face here.
Yeah.
And just to reload, hope that fr0zen doesn't have Gul'dan to, himself take control of the board, and then, okay, maybe he finds Spiteful Summoner or other sort of burst that he can close out the game with. Speaking of burst, Malfurion is very good at getting incremental damage in.
But is it too slow?
fr0zen's at 6. He does have both Dark Pacts,
right,
and may even be able to set up a board with another Doomsayer. But 6 is not that much life. Ute does have 2 copies of Druid of the Claw, so he doesn't have Leroy for like the exact 6 points of burst damage. But if fr0zen didn't set up a taunt this turn, Druid of the Claw Fungalmancer, could just end the game.
That's right.
And fr0zen going down to 4 here. So he's gonna have to use a Dark Pact this turn, so he doesn't just die immediately to the second Ultimate Infestation. So I'd expect to probably see, say, Dark Pact, Stegadon, Doomsayer, Dark Pact, Stegadon. It's gonna tap down to 2. All right, so Twisting is an excellent draw, but it does give him some protection from a big board reload. He already had the Defile as well.
Yeah, I think fr0zen's tapping aggressively to get to his Blood River Gul'dan. That's his #1 concern. And then I think he's gonna try to set up, a Doomsayer to try to discourage any board development. And in the worst case scenario, just play Stegadon and a Seal minion to get board presence.
So this does at least insist that if Ute plays a minion, one of the things he plays has to be Spellbreaker. Malfurion has to be fairly attractive because you get to set that up here as well, but also, from Ute's perspective, a Spellbreaker here and developing several minions has to be relatively attractive, but he hasn't seen a lot of the AoE from fr0zen's deck. fr0zen still has 6 cards left in his deck, only has 6 cards left in his deck. He has not played a single copy of Defile. He's played 1 copy of Hellfire. He has not played Godfrey or Twisting Nether. So a lot of boards that Ute could develop here would very likely just die.
Yes.
And then he wouldn't have a Spellbreaker potentially for, say, the second Voidlord. So I think that may be a big part of the reason he's leaning on Malfurion.
Yeah, and leaving minions on the board feeds into that AoE as well.
Right.
So this is quite possibly Ute's best chance to get the damage in. And like you said, that 3 damage poke every turn, it adds up a lot. Assuming fr0zen doesn't draw the Death Knight right here, right now.
That is Godfrey, not Gul'dan. Starts with the same letter.
Close, but no cigar. fr0zen has a Stegodon as a way to set up defense and the seal minions, but I think maybe he's weighing if he wants to life tap to potentially get a little bit deeper into his Blood Knight, or his Death Knight, excuse me.
And it looks like it is seal.
No Stegodon. What's the value here of setting up these seals as opposed to setting up a defense to take less damage?
Well, he's not actually facing any damage on the opposing side of the board other than the hero power right now. And I think that maybe he wants to have Stegodon in reserve in case his opponent does have a board he doesn't end up AoEing, because he has Defile, Twisting Nether, Godfrey in his hand. So I have to imagine his thought process is, okay, my general plan here is to just clear the board. I'd rather get these seals going and not necessarily just throw away the Stegodon until maybe he can save me some damage.
This board may look intimidating, but fr0zen has a nice Defile with a Voodoo Doll, and he picks up the Blood Reaver Gul'dan.
He does. Gul'dan, though, now is going to summon Voidlord, 3 Voidwalkers, which leaves him with a board that can be vulnerable to mind control tech.
True.
And 10.
And Ute has been holding 1 card for a very long time when he's had opportunities to develop, in fact, skipping a turn 9.
Right.
Which means that you can at least narrow it down to very few ranges. And it looks like he's just going to go for the Blood Reaver Gul'dan. I think the life gain and the defense is too hard to pass up in this position. Double Voidlord gets back.
Oh, they're both Voidlords, right. I'd actually forgot.
Yeah, one was played from hand, one was recruited.
Right, yeah.
And now Ute is going to put his hope in the Mental Dislocator.
Yeah, you can get a 50-50 to take a Voidlord here.
Yes, I'll take those odds. But even then, does the 50-50 guarantee him victory? It's like 50-50 to stay competitive in the game.
Well, he does have a Spellbreaker for the other one, so that can potentially leave him in a spot where he's able to push through damage. There is, of course, the significant threat of he does take 1 Voidlord. So this actually also makes it relatively difficult for fr0zen to easily clear his board back.
Oh, I think Lord Godfrey always has something to say about that.
It's true.
I haven't done the math immediately, but I just assume that Godfrey can do some wonders here.
I have to imagine that Godfrey clears.
Yes.
He always does.
Well, I mean,
it's going to be a mercy killing.
You just knocked down the Voidlord health total to kind of factor into the removal. So you have a 2, you have a 4.
If you get Voidlord to 6, then you have the 6 trigger, then you need an 8 trigger.
So you bump the 3/3 into the 2/11.
Yep.
And then so you had the 4 trigger and then the 5.
Yes. So yeah, there is definitely
a clicker. And then you have the hero power to help get you there as well. So there's not too much. There's actually not too much complication with how fr0zen wants to clear this. I don't think there's any way to keep any minions alive. It's pretty much just going to be Lord Godfrey standing at the very end of all the explosions. I think fr0zen might be thinking about if there's a way for him to perhaps get greedy, like use Defile instead and save Godfrey for a follow-up. That is something that a lot of the control warlocks will try to do, try to greed their way to the optimal removal.
I was thinking of a twist.
Okay, that's also perfectly fine.
Well, that's interesting because Twist can kill a board from a Spiteful summoner, right? Not
like a Tarantus. I mean, Trantis can get killed by Godfrey, but a couple of things with the lineup first.
Yeah.
But he does have Voodoo Doll.
Right.
So Voodoo Doll Defile perhaps is.
Or Voodoo Doll Godfrey.
Yeah, or Voodoo Doll Dark Pact, second down hero power. Like, there's just a lot of ways you can mix and match this rule.
And yeah, this is probably just going to be a
Godfrey.
Godfrey clear. Home.
This will be a mercy.
He says mercy killing, right?
Yes, he says this will.
I
this
thought
will
he
be
said
a mercy.
massacre for the longest time, and then it was like.
Well, I mean, the thing is, Frozen's kind of running out of time. so to
Well,
speak.
this Bittertide Hydra is going to be able to do a lot of damage eventually, right?
I think if he just Voodoo Doll Defiles, it'll be perfect.
Well, no, I'm saying to Ute.
Oh, yes, correct. Yeah.
He doesn't have a 1 for a Defile, though.
The
Other than Voodoo Doll?
I mean, your opponent's sitting on almost no cards, so, and I mean, you do have. Actually, you're right. The Voodoo Doll and Defile are probably his best removal tools. So he would be parting way with both. Is there a way he can get around?
He could.
He could just put walls, use a Spellstone, and Godfrey to remove.
If you play Stonehill, bite it yourself. Defile, you get 3 ticks on the Hydra. Then you can bump and Spellstone.
Okay.
So then you still have your Voodoo Doll, and you've done like a ton of damage to your opponent thanks to the Hydra.
I don't mind that. I think
It may
the
be
Voodoo
too
Dolls,
fancy.
yeah,
It may be a
it's
little too fancy. But this uses your Voodoo Doll, which is your only potential answer if there's a Spiteful Summoner.
Also pretty interesting that Frozen prioritizing developing onto the board as opposed to using this hero power to keep his life total up. And I think just indicative that he wants to win the game and win the board.
Well, he only has 1 card left in his deck, so he needs to actually close out the game.
It's true. But he does have a decent amount of heal with the Dark Pact, his life hero power, and the Spellstone. The question is Ute going to try to preserve the board? Is he going to try to pressure the life total? Because that Godfrey gets free trades on the board. If you can guarantee that a minion, one of these minions that Godfrey would trade into would survive, then it's worth hero powering because you make up the difference with the minion on board. But Frozen's got so many good tools. He's got hero power to essentially catch up on the board.
He also knows that he still has a Stonehill Defender taunt in his hand, and also that there's another Stonehill Defender in his deck.
True.
So the chances that these minions connect may not be that high. I think the last card in Frozen's deck is his second Hellfire, if my recollection is correct.
And then what's remaining in Ute's deck?
He has second Infestation, second Spiteful.
He could Infestation for 5 burst if he needs.
He also does have his second Druid of the Claw as far as bursting.
Armor up. Interesting. Now that's a plot twist. Oh,
I am totally mistaken.
Defile is way better than Hellfire in this
is.
position.
Yeah.
Fits your mana curve. Frozen can just set up walls, sees that the last card's being played. Some great tools. All these are fantastic. Don't even sleep on the Fellsoul Inquisitor. The lifesteal could be pretty clutch if he clears the board and just gets a little bit of HP back. Frozen perhaps thinking about what's the greediest way he can set up this seal in case he needs to be aggressive and fight back with a fatigue situation.
I think the biggest thing is just getting a 10-10 and the bodies in play to pressure Ute here.
This is something that's kind of been the opportunity cost of Frozen, or not maybe the opportunity cost, but rather the sacrifice, is that he liked to have so aggressively towards the late stage of the game to get to the Death Knight, but he didn't give himself a lot of turns to work with, even though he has all the best tools as he's supposed to. In fact, he's playing Stern Knight Chain Gang for his best tempo opportunity. He's trying to get 4 damage on the board. Pressure the life total.
He does still have a Dark Pact and the Spellstone. There's Spiteful Summoner.
Ooh, and there is an ultimate station in the deck, if we got it correct.
But there's a lot of taunts in the way now.
Yeah. And still has the Defile. That's a big health minion. Frozen's starting to look pretty worried. And Ute's armor up. Earlier might, I mean, before he wasn't able to remove a minion on the board. Perhaps that minion staying alive will bite him?
Right, because if Godfrey hits him twice, that is worse for him than having punched it once, as far as like the armor up is concerned.
He's got 10, 13.
So there's a Stegodon in hand for fr0zen here that can get in the way of another minion potentially. I think that he may be looking to. He doesn't have an upgrade opportunity for the Spellstone, so it's only 3 damage.
Yes. So he can isolate the Stegodon by killing off the minions with the Spellstone or just any kind of removal in hero power, and then play Stegodon and pressure this opponent's life total. So if you Spellstone and like remove the Spiteful Summoner, trade a 4/4 in, and then go face with everything else, you put your opponent to 12, you set up a Stegodon, you set up 2 layers of taunts in case your opponent ultimate infestations, 1 minion, pushes damage. I mean, this is a lot of the permutations and combinations that kind of seem really difficult here. fr0zen wants to stick with the seal plan, it looks like, though.
It's a complicated situation. fr0zen needs to figure out, okay, how do I push enough damage? How do I stay alive?
Right.
Both of those are currently challenging.
Yeah, and people talk about Ultra Soar is a lot of times less preferable than than like having 8/8 giant, but that big health total is coming up huge here for Ute. So fr0zen opting for that line, but he wants to.
That is an awkward card here. It can potentially finish the game with burst, but it throws Ute into fatigue himself.
Yeah, I think he might just die if he ultimate infestations because he can't hero power. He's taking at least 6 damage immediately from the fatigue. And his opponent only takes 2. So he can't push enough damage, unfortunately, with that.
I think the best draw for Ute at this point is his second copy of Druid of the Claw, because that allows him to push burst.
I mean, he might have to ultimate infestation a minion to stay alive on the board. He'll gain 5 armor, but that almost disappears immediately because of the fatigue. And he takes 4 on the following swing, so he's actually taking 10 damage by the next draw that he has.
I mean, he does have the ability to punch down the Searing Chain Gang, use Ultra Soar to kill the taunt, and trade if he wants. And then he still has an Ultra Soar against just a Godfrey. But then, there's still the Dark Pact.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, no, according to the math, he can't actually ultimate infestation because he just dies.
Yeah.
Because of the Godfrey and hero power, because he'd be at 17.
So yeah, Ute just armoring up here.
I think fr0zen knows exactly what Ute drew as well.
Well, there's the 6/6.
Yes. fr0zen gonna also gain as much life as possible.
Yep, got the Dark Pact as well.
And now fr0zen also has guaranteed lethal. If he doesn't draw his taunt, he draws Searing Chain Gang. Does that change anything here? I mean, fr0zen does such a high life total, and Ute has to kill off one of these minions. I mean, there's no room for negotiation here. You have to kill off that 6/6, otherwise you just might die. fr0zen has Spellstone and Bite, can deal 5.
We could actually, fr0zen could attack, Spellstone hero power down the Ultra Soar, leaving Ute with nothing. But Ute's last card is a minion. Ute's last card, I believe, is that copy of Druid of the Claw.
Yes.
Which could push damage immediately and leave him with a threat on the board. And fr0zen is still somewhat deeper into fatigue. He's gonna he's gonna defile hero power and push face. Yeah, and this means that
I think Ute said checkmate. He can't gain enough life to navigate through the fatigue, and he can't end the game through burst damage.
There's Druid of the Claw. Not enough burst here. He could Druid of the Claw and attack the minion, but he's just, he's gonna die to fatigue exactly next turn no matter what.
Very well executed from fr0zen, just trying to account for all the possible scenarios. I think there might have been a couple of awkward bumps along the way, coming down to the fact that he was pretty deep into fatigue, which is a serious concern. But I think that's just it. There's just no way for ute to take this game. And that is going to be a 2-0 lead for fr0zen as ute tosses out a well played.
Yeah, 4 fatigue, but that is not enough. Ute with just the 1 life, and fr0zen finishes him off.
Spiteful Druid off to a rough start on broadcast, at least. We're kind of talking about how it's the most represented deck at this tournament. Almost 60% of the field brought Spiteful Druid, and it is struggling. fr0zen able to get a 2-0 lead, now has to just win with his Spell Hunter, which could be a tall task. But we've seen Spell Hunter also perform decently last week when Dachi brought it and was able to almost get to the top 8.
Yeah, the good news for Ute here is that the Spiteful Druid has a very good matchup against Spell Hunter. It tends to, the Spell Hunter deck tends to struggle there. It can't really put on enough pressure. But the other 2 decks that Ute has, they are decks that can falter against the removal suite that Spell Hunter has available.
It's right. I mean, the Spell Hunter list from fr0zen also has, kind of the full package of works, which is To My Side and Rock Dalar. And those are cards that, while, can provide a lot of high value, sometimes are really volatile with what you want as well. So the Spell Hunter is not even as consistent as you would like it to be, because sometimes you need to line up the removal perfectly. You need to have the right options come to your hand, and it could be suspect to the draw order or just not even having a lot of cards because you run out of resources.
Yeah, the Spell Hunter we saw prior to the rotation that had access to Barnes Yasharaj had the ability to have these explosive openings. That's not really how the deck works anymore. You're much more of kind of a grindy deck that's looking to answer a lot of your opponent's early minions and then kind of flip the switch with Spellstone or To My Side to really push damage late in the game.
Yeah, well, one thing that people don't really talk about is how strong the Death Knight is for the Hunter class.
Oh my god, it's so good now.
There's been a lot of great beasts introduced. You talk about Vicious Scalehide as a beast that could have lifesteal and rush, so you pair that with almost anything to get back in the game. There's been more poisonous minions introduced, and you feel like almost every minion has a poisonous combination. And just the fact that, there's so many more options for Hunter, but a lot of the options also rotated out because there's a concentrated pool. Just feels like Deathstalker Rexxar is really underrated at the moment.
Rexxar is incredibly powerful now. It used to be that when you had Rexxar in a lot of matchups, your best strategy was, okay, I'm just going to try and get some big stealth things and kill you with them. Now, though, thanks to cards like Scalehide, like you said, there's a lot more lifesteal minions, and also rush as a keyword in general. You have a lot of ways to address the board immediately and even claw back from a huge life deficit. And that was something that Hunter was desperately lacking before. There was just Bloodworm, which cost 5 with lifesteal, which is very hard to pair with anything that could immediately impact the board.
And we're going to find out if that's going to be the case. Can fr0zen go for the sweep on newcomer ute, who's worked so hard to get to the big stage? It's his first HCT appearance in any playoffs. Up until then, he's been kind of playing on ladder, finished #1 in February 2018. But according to him, he's been playing since the very beginning of beta. However, he didn't take Hearthstone seriously until last year, 2017. That was when he first hit Legend in 2017. 1 year later, finishing #1, competing against the runner-up from the World Championships. Pretty inspiring story.
That's pretty impressive, yeah. And he has not had the best luck so far in this match with how the games have gone, but definitely in a reasonable position here. I'm curious with his decision to go with the Murloc Paladin here. Right. We often see people kind of stick with the deck until they win in Conquest very frequently, especially when it's your opponent has 1 deck remaining. And I actually think that the Spiteful deck may have been his strongest matchup coming in. But maybe he just wants to, all right, I'm going to see if I can win with this. And if I can't, doesn't matter. Your game score is not a huge deal here.
What a rip from fr0zen off the top. An explosive trap to stop the Murloc Tidecaller aggression and upgrade his Spellstone. Now has a perfect 2 to 5 curve.
Oh, and there's a couple of awkward things here for Ute and going into this secret, because you want to play around a lot of the secrets very differently. If this is Wandering Monster, you don't want to attack. You want to develop your board, because you don't want to give your opponent a potential, say, 3/3 minion, which is about what it is on average. But against Explosive Trap, if you develop your board, you are getting crushed.
Yes. I mean, there is also the Odd Freezing Trap, which is the only copy in his deck. And so if Ute says 3 out of 4 or 3 out of 5 secrets I want to attack into, I'll take my odds. given that fr0zen played it so quickly off the top of the deck. So I think Ute took his percentages, ends up being rewarded, and now can develop into this. And boy, does he have a lot of minion flood. He's got double lost in the jungle. I don't blame fr0zen for playing that trap immediately, though, because he wants to follow his curve.
To my side.
Animal Companion, I mean, Misha's as good as it gets, really, in the board position like this. No Murlocs to buff for the Murloc War Leader, so Ute's gonna be playing Muster for Battle 2018.
Yeah, but now the Champions Maul coming down, allowing Ute to clear this off and keep 4 minions on board. fr0zen may be thinking, I kind of wish I still had that explosive trap.
Yeah,
We're looking to pick up another one, or perhaps an Unleash the Hounds.
Yeah. But I think what he really cares the most is just the Spellstone. Having the most stable board possible going into it.
Tarum picked up.
Wow.
3 minions on board already. Cult Arms lands 2 Righteous Protectors.
Ooh. We're kind of talking about how things were looking pretty good for the Curver Hunter, but Paladin might just be too much with momentum. Cult Arms into the Sunkeeper Tarum.
Spellstone is good. You know, you get 3 3/3s, but Sunkeeper Tarum, you get 5 3/3s. All right, yeah. fr0zen gonna go ahead and play Wandering Monster. Use the kill command here to try to defend. But yeah, Sunkeeper Tarum here on this board, no matter what this secret is, it's bad for fr0zen because Wandering Monster, sure, my guys are 3/3 on average, trade into a Wandering Monster minion, or even just eat it straight.
Let me light the way.
Oh. That's a pretty decently statted 3-mana minion.
If he 2 size into Leok, it gets lifesteal.
Yes, you're correct. Don't think he's gonna offer that. Wants to go for the highest tempo play possible.
But I mean, even here, a full Spellstone, he's against a pair of 3 free Righteous Protectors. They can just eat these guys.
So nuts. And Ute even has secret possibilities that can really throw things into a mix, like Redemption. I mean, honestly, you're putting a lot of damage too. I wouldn't hate eye for an eye.
I think this game is just over at this point. There's just too much for fr0zen to deal with. Even the best draw in his deck is probably Unleash the Hounds right now. And that doesn't do enough to really get him through, I think, especially with the Redemption. Yeah, fr0zen is gonna go ahead and concede, so quick 2-0 lead for fr0zen, but even quicker win from Ute here to get himself in the board.
Yeah, I think the Murloc Paladin isn't exactly what a lot of people are accounting for right now. They're more factoring the even Paladin, maybe sometimes the odd Paladin. But Murloc Paladin is definitely being slept on, so when people look at Hunter being good against some of the Paladin decks, it's really more that even build as opposed to the Murlocs, which can build big, tall walls. Because if it wasn't for those recruits in the Tarum, it could have been a Murloc wall hit by Megasword, which also would have been problematic.
A big part of that is how threatening Tidecaller is immediately. Oftentimes, if you're playing against a Paladin, you want to wait on the explosive trap because you're like, okay, you know, I don't want to give them time to, or rather, I want to let them build up some things and play my explosive trap, get a board full of stuff, rather than, well, I have to answer this Tidecaller because if it gets like rock pooled and buffed and Megasword immediately, it just snowballs out of control. That's not a threat that comes from even Paladin.
Yeah, it's a tough position. I mean, you feel like you want to answer it, but at the same time, you needed that explosive trap later on in the game. But that's in the past, and we'll see whether or not Hunter can bring fr0zen to victory or will Ute make the comeback when we return to the Americas Summer Playoffs. fr0zen is currently up 2-1 over ute from Argentina and looking to see if he can start off Swiss from a 1-0 record, or will our first timer here from ute1234 be able to take down fr0zen, who finished second in the 2017 World Championship. If you guys have missed the first half of the series, you kind of missed a lot of the action. We had a Recruit Warrior start things off fast and furious, taking down the Spiteful Druid, followed by a Control Warlock performance to remember. And then we have the Spell Hunter here falling a little bit flat against Paladin, but it does struggle against a lot of those Paladin decks. And Hunter in general has still a lot of room for exploration, I feel like. It's definitely a class that's underdeveloped in the meta compared to all its other classes that's currently going on.
Well, one of the big reasons people played Spell Hunter originally was its matchup against Tempo Mage, and that is one of the decks that Ute still has remaining in his lineup.
That's right. Tempo Mage definitely got a lot of popularity compared to last week, and General Priest has lost a lot of its representation, and then Paladin, Druid, Mage all kind of bumped up a spot because of it. And then we're kind of taking a look at just how the rest of the lineup works here for Ute. It just seems like he's got a straight-up tempo-oriented lineup. He's got Q-Block as his anchor with Warlock, and everything else, Murloc, Paladin, Spiteful Druid, Tempo Mage, puts out a lot of stats, a lot of damage real quick. And Spell Hunter largely got popular because not only the Barnes Yashiraj package, because it had a lot of answers to some of those fast building damage, but ever since rotation, it did lose a little bit of its tools since then. So we'll see if this modern version that fr0zen has can deal with some of these decks here. I do find it kind of interesting that fr0zen doesn't play things like, Wing Blast, for example. I thought that was one of the most powerful cards from the set, and yet it's not in his deck list there. A little bit sad to see, I guess, from a Witchwood fan perspective.
All right, well, if you're a Prince Keliseth fan and you're keeping score, here it is again for Ute in his opening hand with a pretty strong overall tempo opening. The Gluttonous Ooze is also very strong against the Hunter deck, which can often lean on Eaglehorn Bow and Candle Shot for removal in the mid game. Does find a Spellstone, which is very crucial in this matchup. Being able to actually turn the corner and get that Spellstone online is one of your best ways as a Hunter to deal with what the Druid is bringing to bear.
Yeah, I mean, fr0zen was looking for a Spellstone so aggressively. Basically a full mulligan, except for Wandering Monster, which is another really good keep.
Charge forward.
Hey. And we thought Warsong Commander would no longer be seen in tournaments, Kibler.
There it is. It's actually really good with the Unleash the Hound.
Oh my god, there is a combo with Unleash the Hound.
Your charge minions have +1 attack.
It would be
Never
useless.
Been better.
It would be useless with just a regular Unleash the Hounds if Warsong Commander never got buffed to its current effect.
Yeah, buffed Warsong.
What if he just ignores it?
Ute goes face here, and fr0zen,
I was so ready to pop off.
I wanted to see these.
Yeah, I mean,
Unleash.
he knows. But imagine if, he wasn't able to. That would be quite a world we live in, Kibler.
I would have loved it.
Candle Shot, one of the most effective cards of picking apart the board. Could bait out the Gluttonous Ooze, and then you have the Eaglehorn Bow afterwards as a follow-up. So it ends up sitting up really nicely for the Spellstone, because it also kills off this one attack, one health, Flame Elemental. But Saturday Night Chain Gang's waiting. And on deck, although,
The second Grease Bite is still good here.
Yeah, I was thinking about the Greedy Sprite.
If fr0zen picks up a secret, I did not. Gonna coin out the Spellstone. Okay, so yeah, he just wants to get the board presence immediately. This is pretty scary if there's a Fungal Mancer on the opposing side of the board.
Yeah, Fungal Mancer is what you're super
Ute
scared
want to
of.
find one of those. He does not. So these wolves do line up pretty well against Ute's board, but again, the problem here for fr0zen is that he is not putting on meaningful pressure. If these wolves die, and they easily can here, he is really without anything until this Rok'Dalar. Everything else is just removal. So structurally, he's just in quite a bit of trouble here against what his deck is doing. Another Unleash.
Yeah.
Only he had a Warsong Commander.
I mean, that's kind of the struggle with the... You troll. Yeah, imagine if fr0zen had any kind of real substance to it. He'd be able to take kind of a proactive stance. His best play is Unleash the Hounds.
Get him.
I mean, I was thinking about maybe just taking the bow, the Eaglehorn bow, and then like saving the Unleash the Hounds, but in this case, he doesn't feel like he can get better board position than a single 1/1.
I mean, if he gets 2 hits in with that, it's kind of like he's 0 power lines.
Yeah, I mean, these 1/5 Scarab tokens are doing wonders.
Well, Flanking Strike here actually allows him to take down one of these with the Wolf, so it is good for him that he does have it on board here.
Yeah.
But he wants to kill the other. Let his Wolf.
Yeah. He's gonna really bank on Voidlord to fill up the stand. That's another thing too. If he uses Unleash the Hounds, he fills up his space for Voidlord to get another card, which can be really powerful. And at that point, he's gonna have to be really dependent on a good Voidlord outcome. Ute has a very powerful tempo play with the Gluttonous Ooze and Fungalmancer, but he doesn't have the Ooze for the follow-up weapons, and Candle Shot's on his last charge, so this is Ooze basically doing nothing.
I think he's going to use the MC tech. We see him sort of mousing between the two. There's not that many opportunities to MC tech against the Hunter deck that's already used a Spellstone.
Spoiler, Spell Hunter plays no minions, so most likely Mind Control tech isn't going to actually land on anything.
Well, just gets a bigger minion in play.
True.
That one is buffed by the
It's just
Spellstone.
funny, because there's so many Ooze targets, and there's just like no Mind Control targets outside of Unleash the Hounds and Spellstone.
Although, interestingly, Gluttonous Ooze does mean that one of these wolves is not straight up exchange with his Scarab here.
True.
Because if there is still a Candle Shot in play,
Yeah.
more powerful option for him. So we may actually see Unleash into Bow here, even. Ooh, okay. Well, we talked about how powerful Rexxar is.
Ooh, I'm getting the goosebumps.
Oh,
I love Death.
that is a really good draw for fr0zen here because it gives him a very similar ability to contest the board immediately. It kills the Scarab, allows his Wolf to kill the Ooze, leaving just a 3/1 Fungalmancer in play, and then he has Rexxar online.
Yes.
And yeah, this is.
Yes.
We were just talking about how powerful this card has become with the addition of the new beasts to the pool. We'll see if fr0zen can lean on those zombies to take back this game.
And it comes at a very critical turn too, where Ute is not able to play Ultimate Infestation. It's very clearly demonstrated he has none of his big power spike cards like the Lich King or Spiteful Summoner. So he has another turn to set up here.
And this gives fr0zen the ability, just based on the availability of mana for him and his cards in his hand, he has Unleash, Bow, and Stitch together this turn. So he's gonna build himself a beast.
Okay, those weren't the ones we were talking about when we were talking about how great it's
exciting, but the second set, say he finds, Life Drinker. I was going to say with Hunting Mastiff, Echo Rush. You can, Life Drink your opponent. You actually can't do the
because it costs
6.
6.
I was thinking you could do 5.
But Stubborn
it's still good with
Grasp
Rush.
is
It's
great.
still good with Rush,
Well,
though.
you have Rush and Poisonous now, so you basically take down any Spiteful Summoner target. And you gain life.
The first half didn't Rush.
Oh yeah, you're right.
You don't get to
you're
take
right.
those two together, but he
He can
does have
Poisonous the face killer. Instantly kills a
God,
You're correct.
Why not Poisonous the face? But the Life Drinker Zombies does give him, a little bit of sustain, which helps him. Oh, well, speaking of Spiteful Summoner.
Yes, I mean, he does have the Hunter's Mark, but if it's Tarantus, could be bad news.
Shocker.
It is?
Oh, it's Tarantus! So fr0zen needs to find Poisonous Rush is his best option. He can potentially find anything that's stitched with the new Poisonous Rush fellow, Skittering Horror or whatever it is. Poisonous Rush, Bob would skitter if he took a cheap one.
He picked so fast, I didn't know what he picked.
I did not even see the options.
I think I saw like a Cave Hydra, that's all I saw.
Well, Cave Hydra Viable Skitter is pretty powerful if you can live to it, but I don't know that he can.
Well, he does have To My Side, which can get Huffer and Misha.
It's true.
And then he has like a Hunter's Mark, so he can clear off most of the stuff, and I think he's at like 23, so most likely he should be able to survive. Even if he played like Life Drinker and cleared off one of these minions, I think he should be okay. It's just a lot of stats on the board. Because I believe that the Life Drinker also has Taunt. So, you know, even if your opponent silences it, it's still buying you some time. Your opponent can't just ultimate Infestation in your face. And Vile Brute Skitterer plus Cave Hydra is just such a nutty combo.
It was a Cave Hydra, and
Looks like he picked Honey Mastiff.
yeah. So there's only 19 life for fr0zen here. If he zombies, he goes to 22, and there's actually just dead on the board, right? All right, so yeah, it's going to be the Cave Hydra, going to clear off the board, other than the Tarantus here. But Tarantus is real big. It's actually pretty insane that he got exactly Tarantus, because
Yes, that was the one 10 mana minion that he needed to stay competitive in this game.
15 damage, including that hero power.
I don't know, I think fr0zen might be done here. We'll see what he gets off the zombies.
Got some options. There is Plated Beetle.
No
Yeah,
taunt.
Nothing that's gonna keep him alive.
So I think he has to...
Cracking into a... No, he can't even...
Whoa! Oh, but he's dead anyway.
Perfect combo, but there's a spell break on the other side.
Yeah. Just not enough mana, and now Spiteful Druid is one turn away from ending this game.
Your magic shall
And fr0zen is looking like he might lose momentum here and get reverse swept by this with his Spell Hunter.
This is, though, one of the matchups we said coming in was very tough for the Spell Hunter. And that game, you know, yes, he ended up losing, and he ended up losing in like kind of dramatic fashion thanks to Tarantus being immune to the Hunter's Mark. But he has to be feeling pretty good that he was there to begin with. And he has that last game remaining against the Tempo Mage. That is a matchup which is typically quite favored for Spell Hunter.
Well, right now the series is tied 2 games apiece. The winner of this will win the series and then move on, but it is the best matchup on paper for this Hunter deck. So we'll find out what happens when we come back to the Americas Summer Playoffs. Stay tuned. We're down to the rubber match between fr0zen and ute. The winner of this will be declared the victors for round 1 Swiss in their series and move on with a 1-0 score. In the meantime, we've got a lot of other games that will also be happening as Sottle and Raven are standing by watching along the action. Let's go into Game 5. Spell Hunter up against Tempo Mage, a matchup that should be good for the Hunters. And part of what Hunter Ace was predicting on social media, saying that there's a lot of mages out there, the Hunters should be able to do well this weekend.
Yeah, it's not the best of draws for fr0zen here, though. Double Unleash the Hounds, quite weak in this matchup. Generally,
Oh,
all right, well,
the turn too late.
Generally, Unleashed really tend to kill anything on the main side of the board. fr0zen does have the bow, but no secrets yet and no spellstones, so none of his best cards for the matchup. Eaglehorn Bow is strong, allowing him to take down some of these minions, but at the cost of life, which is at an absolute premium.
Yeah, he did pick up the Deathstalker Rexxar, which is really nice, though, as an opportunity to gain some life and build some beasts as a win condition if he can't find his spellstone, which is what Spell Hunter wants to do.
Yeah.
And fr0zen, with this bow equip, is taking some pretty heavy damage, because, you know, if the life trigger comes down, that's another 6. That's just, it adds up over time, and now he's down to 18 if ute just plays minions.
But as we mentioned, Rexxar in his hand, and Rexxar now with the update, including more of the beasts, especially the Wiswitch beasts that have a lot more lifesteal than you had before.
Yes.
So that Rexxar is a much better survivability tool in a matchup like this than it ever was before.
The nice thing for ute is that his counterspell will not get blocked by the coin, as fr0zen just used it previously, so it could have bigger impact if fr0zen's trying to swing the board with, say, the Grievous Spider and Unleash the Hounds. Ute thinking about what's the most mana-efficient play, and that's very clearly the Life Drinker, but Mana Worm and Arcanologist sets up 2 threats, which could potentially get repetitive damage and get you 1 minion ahead of a weapon swing, because the weakness of weapons is playing 2 minions, because you only can swing 1 time.
Yeah, I kind of like the idea of playing both Mana Worm and Arcanologist here, because you do prevent your opponent from being able to easily deal with your immediate threat. If you play Life Drinker, yes, you get the damage in, you spend your mana efficiently, but you're not getting more damage from it the next turn. And yeah, ute does decide that this is what he's going for, deploying both minions. Picks up an Explosive Runes off the Arcanologist. The weakness of that card in this matchup is one of the reasons Spell Hunter typically does have a good shot, because it doesn't play any minions, so that card literally does nothing.
I mean, they eventually do play minions with Deathstalker Rexxar.
It's true, it's true.
But, you know, it sometimes doesn't even do anything to them. It's like, you know, 6/9 beast. Right. It doesn't even kill anything.
It's time for a little blood.
So here, playing the Explosive Runes, so this, I think, is going to, is an attempt to get fr0zen to, like, play like a test spell.
Yes.
Rather than just play efficiently what he wants to do. Obviously, he could Arcane Intellect, and all right, well, that Grievous Bright does resolve.
Yes. And
I think that ute was hoping that perhaps, you know, he was going to have something weak that he needed to lead with that didn't have this kind of impact on the board. I think fr0zen is able to take out both minions this turn, and even have a dog.
Yeah, he had to wait ahead, because if there was counterspell, he could just play Animal Companion. So it was a very good sequencing. And now ute is kind of already on the burn plan. He's got Pyroblast, Primordial Glyph can pick up more damage.
Pretty poor results from this Primordial Glyph here.
2 of these effectively don't do much with Deck of Wonders and fr0zen Clone.
I was going to say, I would always take the Deck of Wonders, but a little different scenario.
That's right.
Mana Bind here is actually a potentially powerful card, because there are lots of spells in the Hunter deck. If you can set a Mana Bind into a turn where your opponent needs to play something powerful, it is what he ends up choosing. The obvious tempo play here is Life Drinker, but it actually lines up very well thanks to the Hound on the board into that Rexxar.
Yes.
So this is a kind of perfect scenario for fr0zen, where he can remove the board, gain some armor, and start building beasts.
Question is if he wants more tempo, because Animal Companion and Spellstone, give him more stats on the board immediately, and then he can Deathstalker Rexxar later. Because the thing about Deathstalker Rexxar is you have no board. So if your opponent develops a minion, you're stuck taking most likely weapon damage or banking off the animal companion like a Huffer to clear it again.
Sure, that is true. The fact that he picked up the Hunter's Mark as well allows him to actually remove the board and develop the 2 wolves.
Yes.
Which is certainly a very valuable position to be in.
I mean, I like the Spellstone. You just want to get the minions off the board and push damage every turn. So that way you're not forced in the position where Deathstalker Rexxar has to bail you out, which it feels like that's where Deathstalker Rexxar struggles the most.
Right. Yeah.
When you're gambling on the Build-A-Beast.
Exactly. And I think here specifically the fact that he was able to answer the board and play the Spellstone is pretty huge.
Yeah.
Because if he did not have that opportunity, I think that the Rexxar preventing the repeated damage from the life drink was very important. Okay. Well,
that's a pretty nice pickup actually.
It is.
He likely could clear the board. Just has to hit 3 out of 5 if he Frostbolts 1 minion and then Cinderstorms. But I believe
he's gonna Cinderstorm first.
Okay.
Interesting.
I think he wants to Frostbolt face.
Okay. He does have a Pyroblast in his hand.
Right.
So Frostbolting face is definitely pretty appealing.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much heal in this deck outside of Rexxar. Rock-Delar, I don't think can give you anything substantial.
No, there's no Hunter healing spells.
Yeah, so he wants to save it for the weapon swing now. Okay.
Well, this is another opportunity for Rexxar, for fr0zen if he wants to go for it. The spell of the secret off of the Primordial Glyph is also kind of scary because casting a spell into it, if it is counterspell, you could lose that spell. If it is a mana bind, you're playing an animal companion or a kill command into it, that could be a situation where you give your opponent more damage.
And this was something that ute did not want to see. fr0zen even mulliganed away the Death Knight at first in order to increase his chances for early removal, but by redrawing it, he's ensured the late game plan is no longer viable for ute, because the longer the game goes, the further he falls behind.
Yeah, but the problem for ute here is, now he is trying to claw back in a situation and using removal on board rather than just going face necessarily.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, the Frostbolt did, but it can be a little bit awkward for him, trying to grind through this Rexxar. If fr0zen can find lifesteal minions, this can go very poorly for him.
It is worth noting that, oh man, lifesteal.
There's a blood worm, but there is still the explosive runes up, and fr0zen knows that.
You're right. The explosive runes, though, with the Thunder Rhino,
a life-stealing Rhino. Yeah. That is big. It's a big boy.
The animal companion will trigger, I believe, the mana bind.
It would trigger mana bind, yeah.
And so fr0zen would then have all the information necessary.
And a potential free Huffer.
Ooh, and that's pretty important too, so that ute can't get damage off the Huffer.
The free Huffer no longer can go face.
Yeah.
What kind of Huffer is that?
The worst kind.
All right, well, I was gonna say if there's a fireball here for ute,
oh no!
Sorcerer's Apprentice is not gonna do it.
Oh man. And if ute
missed Huffer there too.
If fr0zen didn't have that Deathstalker Rexxar 5 armor gain,
right?
That Pyroblast is the setup.
He would be dead.
I mean, given that we know fr0zen would also have an opportunity for a Lifesteal Beast.
And now.
I mean, is there many targets you want to silence?
I think you just want the cheapest combination of stats here in case you can get lifesteal, basically.
Yeah, or a taunt.
There's another Bloodworm. You can't pull. This is where the old school lifesteal menu you kept seeing expensive lifesteal, lifesteal.
Right.
And that wasn't something you had an opportunity for previously. He's getting something cheaper than that and actually being able to continue to deploy those. To My Side can be quite good. Kill Command can be quite good.
Yeah, the thing about To My Side is I wonder if that can actually set up potential ways to kill your opponent, but I think for now what just matters to fr0zen is surviving any kind of onslaught.
They just want to kill both these minions, I imagine. You don't want to potentially get. I guess there's no possibility of a 2-spell combo that kills you from 15 here. Even Pyroblast Frostbolt, if you're alive.
Right.
So maybe he just wants to push face and try and set up lethal. Yeah.
Oh man.
so close and yet so far.
Well, we definitely want to Pyroblast the face to try to set up for a fireball. The only thing is, what if these arcane missiles doesn't clear off any of the minions with your Sorcerer's Apprentice?
Yeah, I mean,
Oh no.
the reality is that fr0zen just has that Tundra Rhino in hand. It's going
Right.
to life steal for 6. So even if Ute is able to kill one of these, fr0zen's back up to 10. There's only the one Pyroblast. So.
Right. That was the ideal thing, because now he sets up for a Frostbolt, but I mean,
It's actually life stealing for 7 thanks to Leok.
yeah.
He gets explosive ruined, but that is
Ouch.
14 damage and 11 life for fr0zen. And yeah, Ute throws out the well played. And we see fr0zen look very relieved that he was able to climb out of this one.
Yeah, I mean, Hunter made it dramatic, but it got its job done. Doesn't matter if you win 3-0 or 3-2. fr0zen is going to take this series, starting off with a Recruit Warrior victory and ending it with Spell Hunter. And I think that tells you all you need to know about the series, that it was pretty weird from the get-go.
It was. But that, like I said in the pre-show, that's why I love watching fr0zen. You know, he always brings these unusual decks, these really refined lineups, and even just the way that he approaches the games is often super